For the last 5 months, we've been looking after this Cupra Born. Would we have a Born again? Are we torn about the Born? We'll tell you all you need to know, but I do have some questions about Moldovan company car tax.
In this job, I'm lucky enough to drive a lot of cars. It means that some days I'll be driving a Bentley, the next, a buggy. In an Ami, they point and smile, unless they're in a truck and trying to overtake. In that tactical green Audi e-tron RS, they take videos of you. And in a BMW, they refuse to let you out of junctions.
Now, I've been driving this Cupra Born for a few months now, and it has the strangest effect on people. Everyone seems to love it. Now, for example, I went to the seaside and there was one of those car parks that has a booth where you have to pay. And the more mature lady there said you can have an hour's free parking and the prime spot in the car park just because I want to look at it. Honestly.
Boy racers in tuned Golfs respect it too, and I get asked questions about it whenever I park up or stop to charge. And when they ask, I tell them the truth, that I love it too. It looks good, it drives well, and it's efficient. This is the 58 kWh V3, which has just enough range to do most things. It's done 200-mile trips in one sitting and has enough left to get me to an alternative charger if the one I've chosen is broken.
Over the 6,412 miles we've had this car, it's averaged 3.9 miles per kilowatt hour, which I think is pretty good. But this morning, since start, I managed 4.3 miles per kilowatt hour, so a pat on the back for me. I've had it down to 5% on a couple of occasions, and you plug it into a rapid charger and it slurps up the watts at about 100 kilowatts an hour. So by the time you've had a wee and a sandwich, you've got 80% and you're ready to go on.
There is a version with a 77 kWh battery and has an even longer range, but because it's heavier, it's less efficient. It also has to make do with only 4 seats, because otherwise you could overload it if you're carrying hefty teenagers around.
Later models have the option of an e-boost button on the steering wheel, which gives you an extra few horsepower, so it takes it from this car's 201 to 226 just temporarily. Now, we opted to take the car earlier and do without the e-boost button, and I think it was the right decision. I've never thought this car needs a little more power. By the way, there are a few cars that, like this Born, all have 201 horsepower or thereabouts. And it's not just the Volkswagen Group cars, there's Kias and the Hyundais and MGs. And I don't know if it's because they all have the motor made by the same company, or is it some strange company car tax rule in Moldova or something. But you guys are clever, you'll know, so please tell me in the comments because I'm genuinely curious. There's also plenty of space in here. Now, a lot of modern electric cars have really tiny door openings, which means that you have to kind of fold yourself to get in. I'm looking at you, Polestar, and it's especially difficult if you're a little wide around the middle or perhaps a bit taller. But in here, the doors are big and there's enough space for 6-footers, apparently.
These sporty seats are really comfortable too, and as this is the top V3 model, it has a massage function. It's the sort of thing I've only ever seen on proper premium cars, and although it's not quite the same as getting a good kneading from a chiropractor, it does help stop the aches on longer journeys.
Everyone who gets in the Cupra really seems to like the way it drives too. This version has 20-inch wheels, which should mean that it has a really uncomfortable ride because it doesn't have those squishy tyres, but somehow it doesn't, and yet it feels sporty too. It's a really nice compromise. The motor sits at the back, which means it's rear-wheel drive. Now, what that means is that if you come out of a junction and it's a bit damp, you don't get that kind of squirming steering wheel effect that you get because the front wheels are trying to do the driving and the steering at the same time. And that means it feels a little more sportier, and it's also much nicer feel through the steering wheel. Now, talking of tyres, I did have a bit of a mishap with one of these on a pothole, and it burst. The sidewall had gone. Now, bear in mind that these are specific to this car. They're filled with gloop and they're a very strange size. So I was prepared for a long wait, but Continental had the tyres in stock and it was fixed next day, which is amazing. Now, I've heard that some Korean cars, you're not able to get tyres for months, so I was really pleasantly surprised. Now, while I love the Cupra, there are some niggles that I've had to learn to live with, and my biggest one is the visibility. This A-pillar here is huge, so it means when you get to a roundabout like this one, you have to do what I call the safety shuffle, which is to go like this to make sure that you haven't missed a motorbike or even an entire car in the blind spot. I'm also really infuriated by the wipers because they're meant for left-hand drive cars. It's like the Volkswagen ID.3. So this is always the lead wiper and it flicks water in front of your eye line, which doesn't get cleared by this one in time. It also leaves a really big gap here, which isn't cleared. So it makes this blind spot from this A-pillar even worse. Now, we can't talk about any of the modern Volkswagen Group cars like this without moaning about the technology. Now, it is a bit of a pain. There are some switches over here which make it a bit easier to do things like defrosting the windows, but sometimes you plug in your phone and you can't charge and have Apple CarPlay at the same time. It's really irritating.
The app works reasonably well, although for some reason it's reverted to kilometres and I can't get it back into old money, so I have to do the sums in my head. It's also bizarrely pessimistic sometimes about the available range for no reason. While the car will say it has 200 miles, the app will suggest my full charge won't take me more than 100 kilometres or so.
Another thing, you see this charging pad for your phone? It's not a charging pad for your phone, it just looks like one. I think it will be on later models, but it had to give up its microchip because there's this shortage at the moment. The only other complaint I have really is about the paint. Now, I really love the grey finish of this car, but it seems really soft, so stone chips seem to mark it really quickly, and you have to wipe off bird droppings really quickly or they mark the paint. I think I'm going to have to get handy with a touch-up pencil and a polisher. So after living with it for 5 months, would I recommend the Cupra Born? Absolutely. It's better to drive and better to look at, I think, than a Volkswagen ID.3. And it has the advantage you'll get one of these much faster from the factory. So you have to wait a year for an ID.3 and you get one of these in a few months. There are a few niggles, but we've learnt to live with them and I love it.
Let us know what you think of the Born in the comments below and like and subscribe to the channel, please. I promise that very few of the videos have me in them usually, so don't let this put you off.